The rescue. Dr. Marcus Chen wiped sweat from his forehead as he adjusted the environmental scanner for the third time that morning. The readings were impossible, yet they kept coming back the same. Thermal signatures that defied explanation scattered across the rocky canyon below, each one pulsing with a rhythm that reminded him of a heartbeat. "Command, this is Survey Team Alpha. I'm getting some unusual readings in Sector 7. Marcus spoke into his comm device, while his partner, Elena Vasquez, secured their rappelling equipment. The response crackled through with static interference. "Copy that, Alpha. Investigate and report. Be advised, we're detecting electromagnetic anomalies in your area." Marcus had been exploring alien worlds for 12 years, ever since humanity's first successful faster-than-light voyage. He'd seen crystalline forests that sang in the wind, oceans of liquid mercury under twin suns, and creatures that seemed pulled from the wildest dreams of ancient mythologists. But this planet, designated as Kepler 442c in the star charts, felt different. The air itself seemed to hum with an energy that made his skin tingle. Elena finished checking their gear and moved to the canyon edge. "Readings show the heat sources are about 200 meters down. Could be geothermal activity, but the patterns are too regular." She paused, studying her tablet. "Marcus, look at this. The thermal signatures are moving in coordination like they're communicating." The canyon walls were a deep amber color, streaked with veins of what looked like fossilized lightning. Strange formations jutted from the rock face at irregular intervals, creating natural shelves and caves. As they descended on their cables, Marcus noticed scratch marks carved deep into the stone. They were too precise to be natural erosion, too large to be made by any creature he knew. Halfway down, Elena's cable jerked suddenly. "Something's wrong," she called out, examining the frayed strands above her. "The rock is sharper than it looked. My line's compromising." Marcus moved closer, but before he could reach her, a sound echoed from the canyon depths that made them both freeze. It was unlike anything in the xenobiology databases, a cross between a whale song and the rumble of distant thunder. The sound seemed to come from multiple sources, harmonizing in a way that spoke of intelligence. "Did you record that?" Elena whispered. Before Marcus could answer, Elena's cable snapped completely. She fell 20 meters before Marcus could react, landing hard on a rocky outcropping. Her scream echoed off the canyon walls, followed by an ominous silence. "Elena!" Marcus rappelled down as fast as his equipment would allow. When he reached her, she was conscious but clearly injured. Her left leg was bent at an unnatural angle, and her scanner lay in pieces beside her. "I can't move it," she gasped, trying to sit up. "Something's definitely broken." Marcus activated his emergency beacon while examining her injuries. The fracture was compound, and they were still over 100 meters from the canyon floor with no way to climb back up safely. His medical training told him that moving her without proper stabilization could cause permanent damage. "Command, this is Alpha. We have a medical emergency. Team member down with a severe leg fracture, requesting immediate evacuation." The response was not what he hoped for. "Alpha, we're tracking a massive storm system moving in from the east. Evacuation will be delayed minimum 6 hours, possibly 12. Can you establish a secure position and wait for extraction?" Marcus looked at Elena's pale face and the darkening sky above. 6 hours might be too long. "Copy, Command. We'll establish position and wait." As he worked to splint Elena's leg with materials from their emergency kit, the harmonious sound returned, closer this time. Through a gap in the rocks, Marcus caught his first glimpse of movement in the canyon below. Massive shapes moved with fluid grace between the stone formations, their scales catching the alien sunlight like polished armor. "Dragons," Elena breathed, following his gaze. They actually looked like dragons. The creatures were magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Each one was easily the size of an earth elephant, with serpentine necks, powerful limbs, and wings that created small windstorms when they moved. Their scales shifted color from deep emerald to brilliant gold as they moved through different lighting. But what struck Marcus most was their obvious intelligence. They moved with purpose, communicating through complex vocalizations that carried emotional undertones. "They're beautiful," Elena said, momentarily forgetting her pain. As if summoned by her words, one of the dragons looked up toward their position. Its eyes were like liquid amber, ancient and knowing. For a moment, human and alien regarded each other across the evolutionary gulf that separated them. Then Marcus heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold. It was weaker than the adult dragon calls, higher in pitch, and filled with unmistakable distress. Somewhere below them, something was crying for help. "There," Elena pointed with a shaking hand. "In that cave entrance, about 50 meters down and to the left." Marcus followed her indication and saw it. A smaller dragon, no bigger than a large dog, was trapped beneath a pile of fallen rocks. Its scales were dull compared to the adults, and it moved with the awkward coordination of youth. The little creature's cries were growing weaker. The adult dragons had heard it too. They circled the trapped youngling, their calls becoming more agitated, but the rocks that pinned the baby were wedged in a narrow crevice that the adults couldn't reach. Their massive size, an advantage in most situations, now worked against them. "We have to help," Marcus said, though he wasn't sure how. "Marcus, no. You can't leave me here and I can't move. I'm not leaving you. But that baby is dying, and those adults are getting more upset by the minute. If they think we're a threat—" Elena understood immediately. An angry parent was dangerous regardless of species, and these parents had natural weapons that could reduce a human to component atoms. But a grateful parent might be something else entirely. "The medical kit," Elena said suddenly. "The emergency grappling hooks. They're rated for 500 kilograms. If you can get down there—" Marcus was already moving before she finished speaking. The grappling hook fired true, embedding in solid rock near the trapped youngling. As he rappelled toward the cave, the adult dragon's calls changed tone. They weren't aggressive now, but watchful, as if they understood his intentions. The cave was barely large enough for Marcus to work in. The baby dragon looked up at him with eyes that held no fear, only trust. Its breathing was labored and one wing was clearly damaged. The rocks pinning it were loose shale, probably dislodged by seismic activity. "Easy, little one," Marcus said softly, though he doubted the creature understood human speech. "Let's get you out of here." Working carefully, he began moving the smaller rocks first, testing each piece to ensure he wouldn't cause a larger collapse. The baby dragon watched him work, occasionally making soft chirping sounds that reminded him of earth birds. Its scales were warm to the touch, and he could feel a rapid heartbeat beneath them. The largest rock was the problem. It was wedged at an angle that made it impossible to lift safely, and it was directly across the dragon's hindquarters. Marcus tried several approaches, but each attempt risked crushing the creature further. Then he remembered his emergency charges. Each member of the survey team carried small explosive devices for clearing rock falls or creating emergency shelters. They were precisely calibrated, designed to move specific amounts of material without causing widespread destruction. "This might be loud," he told the baby dragon, positioning the charge carefully. "But it's going to get you free." The explosion was smaller than a firecracker, but perfectly placed. The wedged rock split cleanly, and Marcus was able to push the pieces aside. The baby dragon struggled to its feet, testing its injured wing. When it looked at Marcus, he saw something in those amber eyes that transcended species barriers. Gratitude. The adult dragon's calls had stopped. As Marcus helped the youngling from the cave, he saw them waiting below, arranged in a perfect circle. The largest of them, a magnificent creature with scales that shifted from deep purple to silver, stepped forward. Marcus found himself holding his breath as the adult dragon examined its offspring. The baby chirped excitedly, nuzzling against the adult's massive snout. Then both dragons turned to look at Marcus. The adult dragon's call was different now, deeper, more resonant, carrying harmonics that seemed to vibrate in Marcus's chest. It wasn't aggressive or questioning. It was acknowledgement, recognition. The sound of one intelligent being thanking another. "Elena, are you seeing this?" Marcus called up to his partner. "Every second of it. Marcus, they're not just animals. The way they're looking at you, the way they're communicating. We're witnessing something unprecedented." The adult dragons began moving then, not away as Marcus expected, but closer. They formed a protective circle around him and the injured youngling. Their massive wings created a shelter from the increasing wind, and their combined body heat warmed the cave area significantly. "They're protecting us," Marcus realized. "They understand that we helped their baby, and now they're helping us." As night fell over the canyon, Marcus found himself part of something he'd never imagined. The dragons took turns bringing him food. Strange fruits from somewhere higher up the canyon walls. They shared their water, regurgitating clean liquid into natural stone basins. Most importantly, they shared their warmth as the temperature dropped far below what his survival gear could handle. The injured baby dragon had attached itself to Marcus, curling up against his side like an enormous cat. Every time he tried to move away, it would make distressed sounds until he returned. The adults seemed to find this amusing, making soft, rumbling sounds that Marcus interpreted as laughter. "Marcus," Elena called down. "My leg is feeling better. I think the cold is helping with the swelling." "That's good. Command said extraction might take 12 hours. Looks like we're spending the night with our new friends." Through the long night, Marcus learned things about the dragons that would revolutionize xenobiology. They had complex social structures, with clear hierarchies based on age and wisdom, rather than simple dominance. They sang together in harmonies that seemed to tell stories, their voices painting pictures of dragon history across the canyon walls. Most remarkably, they seemed to understand that he and Elena were different from other creatures they'd encountered. They brought him specific items, testing his reactions. They showed him cave paintings that depicted dragons and smaller creatures living in harmony. They were trying to communicate, to establish a relationship that went beyond simple gratitude. When dawn finally came, Marcus was exhausted but exhilarated. The baby dragon had recovered enough to fly short distances, though it still favored its injured wing. The adults had spent the night teaching it, and Marcus, by extension, basic elements of dragon society. The sound of approaching aircraft finally echoed down the canyon. The rescue team had arrived, but Marcus found himself reluctant to leave. He'd experienced something that few humans ever would, a genuine first contact with a truly alien intelligence. The adult dragons seemed to sense the approaching separation. The largest one, the one Marcus had come to think of as the pack leader, approached him directly. With surprising gentleness for such a massive creature, it touched its snout to Marcus's forehead. The sensation was indescribable. For a moment, Marcus felt connected to something vast and ancient, a mind that had seen centuries pass and held memories of dragons long dead. Images flashed through his consciousness, not quite thoughts, but something deeper. He saw the canyon as it had been when the dragons first arrived, a green valley with flowing rivers. He felt their sorrow as the climate changed and their world grew harsh. Most clearly, he felt their loneliness, the weight of being the only truly intelligent species on their world. Until now. When the connection ended, Marcus staggered backward, overwhelmed by what he'd experienced. The dragon leader stepped back and called out in a voice that echoed off every canyon wall. It was answered by dozens of voices from throughout the valley, dragons Marcus hadn't even known were there. "What was that about?" Elena called down as the rescue team's ropes dropped toward them. Marcus looked at the baby dragon, still pressed against his side, and at the circle of adults watching him with their ancient eyes. "I think," he said slowly, "they just adopted us." The rescue proceeded smoothly, with the dragons watching, but not interfering, as Marcus and Elena were lifted to safety. But as the aircraft prepared to leave, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "Command, I need to file an immediate xenobiological report. These aren't just animals. They're a sentient species, and they're trying to establish diplomatic contact." The response was skeptical. "Alpha, you've been through a traumatic experience. We'll debrief you fully when you're back at base." "No," Marcus said firmly, watching the dragons below. "This can't wait. They saved our lives, and they're trying to tell us something important. We need xenolinguistics experts, cultural specialists, and a full diplomatic team down here immediately." As the aircraft climbed away from the canyon, Marcus saw the dragons launch into flight below them. They weren't scattering to return to their normal lives. They were following, their powerful wings carrying them effortlessly through the sky. The baby dragon led them, chirping excitedly as it struggled to keep pace with its elders. "Elena," Marcus said, watching the magnificent procession below, "I think our mission just changed from exploration to first contact." Elena smiled despite her pain. "And I think those dragons just decided to make sure we get home safely." Looking down at the creatures that had shared their food, their warmth, and their trust, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Humanity had just gained its first alien allies, and he was the bridge between two species that couldn't be more different yet had found common ground in the simple act of helping someone in need. The dragon's formation was precise, almost military in its discipline. They weren't just following the aircraft. They were escorting it, ensuring safe passage through their territory. As they flew through the morning sky, their scales caught the sunlight and threw rainbows across the clouds, a living celebration of the moment when two species chose friendship over fear. Marcus smiled as he realized the truth. He hadn't just rescued an alien hatchling. He'd rescued the first ambassador between humanity and the dragon packs of Kepler 442c, and judging by the protective formation flying below them, that ambassador had very powerful friends. The Alliance. 3 months after the canyon rescue, Marcus Chen stood in the newly constructed xenobiology station overlooking the valley where he'd first encountered the dragons. The facility buzzed with activity as scientists, linguists, and diplomats worked to establish meaningful communication with Kepler 442c's indigenous intelligent species. The baby dragon, now officially designated as Spark by the research team, had become a permanent resident of the station. Its injured wing had healed perfectly under human medical care, but Spark showed no interest in returning to the wild full-time. Instead, it had appointed itself as the unofficial ambassador between species, dividing its time between the human facility and the dragon communities scattered throughout the region. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this," called Dr. Sarah Kim, the xenolinguistics expert who had arrived with the second wave of researchers. She was bent over a complex array of audio equipment, her face flushed with excitement. Marcus approached her workstation, stepping carefully around Spark, who was curled up near the heaters like an oversized cat. The dragon had grown considerably in 3 months, now standing nearly waist-high to a human adult, but it still followed Marcus everywhere with the devotion of a loyal dog. "We've had a breakthrough," Sarah continued, pulling up waveform analyses on her screens. "The harmonic patterns in dragon communication aren't just language. They're 3-dimensional sound sculptures that convey emotional, temporal, and spatial information simultaneously. Watch this." She played a recording of the dragon leader's call from the previous day. The computer translated the complex harmonics into a visual representation that looked like flowing water made of light. This section here represents immediate time, what's happening now. But these overtones reference past events, and these ultra-low frequencies that we can barely detect are discussing possibilities, potential futures. They're not just talking, Dr. Chen. They're sharing complete experiential frameworks. Marcus studied the display, beginning to understand the implications. So, when the pack leader touched my forehead in the canyon, you experienced a direct neural interface. The dragons can share memory engrams through bioelectric field manipulation. It's how they maintain cultural continuity across generations. Every dragon carries the collective memory of their species. A soft chiming sound from Spark interrupted their conversation. The young dragon had lifted its head and was looking toward the valley with obvious excitement. Through the facility's windows, Marcus could see the familiar sight of dragons approaching in formation. But this wasn't the usual small group that visited daily. The sky was filled with dragons, more than Marcus had ever seen together. They came from all directions, their scales creating a shifting tapestry of colors against the alien sunset. As they landed in the valley below, Marcus counted over 200 individuals. "This is unprecedented," breathed Dr. Kim. "According to our observations, dragons typically travel in family groups of 8 to 12. We've never documented anything like this gathering." Spark chirped urgently and moved toward the facility's main exit. It was clearly expected to join the gathering below, but it kept looking back at Marcus with obvious invitation. "I think," Marcus said slowly, "we're being summoned to a formal meeting." The walk down to the valley took 20 minutes, with Spark practically dancing with anticipation beside them. Marcus had convinced the station commander to let him attend with a minimal escort, arguing that the dragons had shown nothing but friendship since the first encounter. Dr. Kim accompanied him, along with 2 security officers who carried recording equipment rather than weapons. The scene in the valley was breathtaking. Dragons of all sizes and colorations had arranged themselves in concentric circles around a natural amphitheater formed by ancient rock formations. The pack leader that Marcus recognized stood at the center, but it was flanked by several other dragons, whose bearing suggested equal authority. As the human delegation approached, the assembled dragons began a low harmonic song that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. Dr. Kim frantically worked her portable recording equipment, trying to capture the full range of frequencies. "It's beautiful," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I've never heard anything so complex. It's like listening to the history of an entire civilization." Spark bounded ahead and took its place among the younger dragons, but it positioned itself facing the humans rather than the dragon speakers. Its role as intermediary was clear to everyone present. The pack leader stepped forward and fixed its ancient eyes on Marcus. When it spoke, the harmonics were simpler than the grand song, clearly modified for human comprehension. Dr. Kim's equipment provided a rough translation. "Friend saver of young hope, we gather in recognition of bond debt unpaid. The time of choosing approaches." Marcus felt the weight of hundreds of dragon gazes upon him. "What kind of choosing?" he asked, though he doubted the dragons could understand English. Spark chirped a translation, and the pack leader responded with a complex series of tones. Dr. Kim worked frantically to parse the meaning. Something about other sky hunters? Dangerous ones who come from far cold dark? "I'm not getting clean translations on some of these concepts." A different dragon, one with scales that shifted from deep red to black, stepped forward. Its communication was more urgent, punctuated by sounds that needed no translation. Warning calls, alarm signals, fear. The portable translator struggled with the rapid-fire communication, but key phrases emerged. "Star killers approach. Deathbringers from the void between. Ancient enemies return." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "Dr. Kim, are they talking about an invasion? Other aliens?" Before she could answer, The sky above them exploded into light, not the warm radiance of the system's star, but the harsh glare of fusion engines. A massive spacecraft was dropping through the atmosphere, its hull scarred with what looked like battle damage. The dragon's response was immediate and terrifying. Every adult in the gathering launched simultaneously, their wings creating a thunderous roar that shook the ground. But they weren't fleeing. They were forming an attack formation, placing themselves between the descending ship and the humans. "Command, this is Chen. We have an unidentified vessel entering atmosphere. Repeat, unknown alien contact. The dragons are treating it as hostile." The radio crackled with confusion and alarm from the research station. "Copy, Chen. We're tracking the vessel. It's massive, easily 10 times the size of our largest transport. Get back to base immediately." But Marcus couldn't move. Spark had placed itself directly in front of him, its scales bristling with protective aggression. Around them, the younger dragons were herding the humans into the center of their formation, creating a living shield. The alien ship settled onto the valley floor with surprising grace for something so large. Up close, Marcus could see that it was unlike any technology he'd encountered. Where human ships were sleek and functional, this vessel was organic in appearance, as if grown rather than built. Its surface pulsed with veins of bioluminescent light, and appendages that might have been weapons or sensors tracked the dragon formations with predatory focus. "Chen," Dr. Kim whispered. "The dragon's reaction suggests they know this species. This isn't first contact for them." The ship's hull began to iris open like a flower, revealing an interior that glowed with sickly green light. The creatures that emerged were nightmarish, combining the worst aspects of insects and reptiles. They stood upright like humans, but moved with the fluid coordination of hive minds. Each one was armed with devices that hummed with barely contained energy. The lead dragon's roar split the air, a sound of pure hatred that made Marcus's bones ache. But mixed with the fury was something else: protective desperation. These dragons weren't just angry, they were terrified for their human friends. The alien commander, distinguishable from its soldiers by more elaborate carapace decoration, issued a series of clicking commands. The soldiers spread out in a classic pincer formation, clearly preparing to capture rather than kill the humans. That's when Marcus understood. The dragons weren't just protecting humans out of gratitude. They were protecting potential allies against an enemy they couldn't face alone. "Dr. Kim," Marcus said urgently, "can you translate a message for me? Tell them we stand with the dragons. Tell them Earth will help fight these invaders." Dr. Kim's portable translator worked frantically as she converted Marcus's words into dragon harmonics. When the message reached the pack leader, its response was immediate. A new song rose from the dragon formation, one that spoke of alliance forged in desperation and sealed in friendship. The alien commander seemed to understand that something had shifted. Its clicking commands became more urgent, and the soldiers raised their weapons. But before they could fire, the dragons attacked. The aerial combat that followed was unlike anything in human military experience. The dragons used their natural agility to devastating effect, striking with coordinated precision that spoke of centuries of fighting these particular enemies. But the aliens' weapons were effective against dragon scales, and several of the magnificent creatures fell burning from the sky. "We have to help them," Marcus said, though he had no idea how. That's when the human cavalry arrived. The research station's security ships crested the valley rim, their particle beams slicing through the alien formation. But more importantly, they had brought something the aliens clearly hadn't expected: human innovation applied to dragon tactics. Dr. Rodriguez, the station's chief engineer, had spent weeks working with the dragons to understand their flight patterns. The security ships didn't just attack, they integrated with the dragon formations, providing covering fire while the dragons used their superior maneuverability for close-quarters combat. The battle was brief but decisive. Faced with an unexpected alliance between two species they had never encountered working together, the alien forces retreated to their ship. But as the vessel lifted off, its commander transmitted a message that needed no translation. This was not over. In the aftermath, as the injured were treated and the dead mourned, Marcus found himself in the middle of an historic moment. The dragons had formally requested a military alliance with humanity, offering their knowledge of the invaders in exchange for human technological assistance. "They call them the Harvester Swarm," Dr. Kim translated as the pack leader shared historical memories. "They've been raiding this region of space for millennia, enslaving or destroying every intelligent species they encounter. The dragons have been fighting them alone for over 1,000 years." Marcus looked at Spark, who, despite being barely out of infancy, had fought alongside the adults with desperate courage. The young dragon's scales were singed, and one eye was swollen shut, but it had never left Marcus's side during the battle. "And now they want our help," Marcus said. "More than that," Dr. Kim replied, studying the complex harmonics of the dragon leader's latest communication. "They want to teach us everything they know about fighting the harvesters, combat tactics, harvester weaknesses, strategic information gathered over centuries of warfare. In return, they want human technology and industrial capacity." The implications were staggering. Humanity had been exploring space for less than 50 years, and already they were being invited into an interstellar war that had raged for millennia. But looking at the dragons who had risked everything to protect a few human researchers, Marcus knew the choice was inevitable. "Tell them yes," he said. "Tell them Earth accepts the alliance." As Dr. Kim translated his words, every dragon in the valley raised their voices in a harmony that shook the stones. It was a sound of hope and determination, the sound of a species that had fought alone for too long, finally finding allies worthy of trust. Spark pressed against Marcus's side, chirping softly. Even without translation, Marcus understood. The baby dragon he had rescued from under a pile of rocks had grown up to become the bridge between species, the living symbol of an alliance that would either save both civilizations or see them fall together. "Command," Marcus said into his radio. "I need to speak with Earth Command immediately. We're going to need a lot more ships." As night fell over Kepler 442c, the dragons and humans worked together to plan their first joint military operation. The research station had become a war room, with dragon memory singers sharing tactical information, while human engineers designed weapons that could be carried by dragon flyers. The harvester swarm would return with greater numbers, that was certain. But when they did, they would face something they had never encountered before. Two species that had chosen to trust each other completely, combining human innovation with dragon wisdom into something greater than either could achieve alone. Marcus stood on the observation deck, watching dragons and humans work side by side in the valley below. Spark was in the middle of it all, translating between species with the natural ease of someone who belonged equally to both worlds. The baby dragon he had rescued had become the symbol of something unprecedented in galactic history, proof that intelligence, compassion, and courage could transcend any difference in biology or culture. And tomorrow that symbol would help lead the fight for the freedom of an entire region of space. The alliance was no longer just between a grateful dragon pack and the human who had saved one of their young. It had become something larger, a beacon of hope in a galaxy where the strong typically preyed upon the weak. The dragons had waited 1,000 years for allies who would stand beside them rather than behind them. In Marcus Chen, they had found not just an ally, but a friend whose species brought something unique to the ancient war: the human refusal to accept that any fight was unwinnable if the cause was just. The victory. 2 years after the first harvester attack, the Kepler 442c system had been transformed into the most heavily defended region of human-controlled space. What began as a simple research station had evolved into a massive orbital shipyard where human technology merged with dragon wisdom to create weapons of war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Sparks Fury, the first ship designed from the ground up for human-dragon cooperation. Named after the young dragon who had started it all, the vessel was a marvel of engineering that incorporated dragon bioelectric field manipulation with human quantum computing. The result was a ship that could think and react with the speed of machine intelligence guided by the intuitive wisdom of ancient dragon battlesong. "Contact bearing 27 Mark 15, announced Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. "Harvester fleet, approximately 200 vessels. They're maintaining standard swarm formation." Marcus nodded calmly, though his heart was racing. This was it, the moment 2 years of preparation had been building toward. The Harvesters had grown tired of the stalemate in this system, and were bringing their full regional fleet to end the Human-Dragon Alliance once and for all. "Signal the Dragon Wings," Marcus ordered. "Tell them the ancient enemy brings their full strength to our doorstep." Through the ship's specially designed neural interface, Marcus felt Spark's presence in his mind. The dragon was no longer the injured hatchling he had rescued, but a magnificent adult whose scales shifted from deep blue to silver as emotions ran through the mental link they shared. Over the months of working together, their bond had evolved beyond simple friendship into something unprecedented, a true telepathic partnership between species. "They think 200 ships will be enough." Spark's thoughts carried amusement mixed with predatory anticipation. "They have not learned that we are no longer the desperate defenders they remember." Marcus smiled as he felt the dragon's confidence flowing through their link. The Harvester's biggest mistake was assuming that the Alliance would simply make human-dragon cooperation slightly more effective. They couldn't conceive of two species so different actually becoming stronger together. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," Marcus spoke into the fleet communications array. "Execute Formation Dragon's Heart. Remember, we're not just fighting for our worlds today. We're fighting to prove that friendship is stronger than conquest." The human fleet began its complex deployment, 27 vessels ranging from massive carriers to sleek destroyers. But they were not alone. From the planet below, over 300 dragons launched in perfect synchronization, their wings catching the light of the system's star as they climbed toward the battle zone. The dragons had learned to fight in space, using specially designed breathing apparatus that allowed them to function in vacuum. More importantly, they had taught humans the art of battle song, the complex harmonic communication that allowed perfect coordination between hundreds of individual fighters without any electronic signals that could be intercepted or jammed. "Harvester fleet is accelerating," reported Torres. "They're moving to standard encirclement pattern. Wait, that's unusual. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies." Marcus frowned. The Harvesters rarely attempted communication during battle. "Put it through translation matrix." The voice that emerged from the speakers was mechanically precise, stripped of any emotion. "Human-Dragon Alliance forces, you are designated for harvesting. Surrender your technology and biological samples. Resistance will result in total sterilization of inhabited worlds." "They still think of us as separate species," Spark observed with dark humor. "They cannot understand that we have become something new." Marcus activated the reply channel. "This is Admiral Chen of the Human-Dragon Alliance. Your harvesting days are over. You've faced individual species before, but you've never faced friends who would rather die than betray each other. Today, you learn the difference." The Harvester response was predictable. Their formation tightened and accelerated, moving to overwhelm the smaller Allied fleet through sheer numbers and firepower. It was the same tactic that had served them well for millennia against isolated species who fought alone. But as the enemy fleet closed to weapons range, something happened that the Harvesters had never experienced. The human ships didn't just coordinate with the dragons, they integrated with them completely. Dragons landed on human ship hulls and linked their bioelectric fields directly to the vessel's navigation systems. Suddenly, ships that had been limited by mechanical reaction times began moving with the fluid grace of living creatures. Human gunners found their targeting enhanced by dragon sensory organs that could track enemies across multiple dimensions of space. Most importantly, the Alliance forces began to sing. The battle song that rose from 300 dragon throats was picked up by human vocal cords and amplified through ship communication systems. It became a weapon in itself, a harmonic frequency that interfered with Harvester neural coordination and broke down their hive mind advantage. "First wave incoming," announced Torres, his voice tight with concentration. "Harvester dreadnoughts are targeting our carriers." Marcus felt Spark's immediate response through their link. The dragon's consciousness expanded, touching every other dragon in the fleet simultaneously. The collective intelligence that resulted was staggering. A group mind that could process tactical information faster than any computer while maintaining the creativity and intuition that only biological intelligence possessed. Through the link, Marcus experienced the battle from hundreds of perspectives simultaneously. He saw the Harvester fleet through dragon eyes that could perceive energy patterns invisible to human sensors. He felt the fear and desperation of the enemy as they encountered coordinated resistance unlike anything in their long history of conquest. "Execute Phoenix Rising," Marcus ordered, though he barely needed to speak. Through the neural links, every ship captain and dragon wing leader knew exactly what was needed. The human carriers launched their fighter wings, but these weren't ordinary spacecraft. Each fighter was piloted by a human-dragon pair, with the dragon providing sensory input and tactical awareness while the human handled weapons and navigation. The result was a fighter force that combined human precision with dragon intuition. But the real surprise was yet to come. As the Harvester fleet moved to engage the fighters, massive shapes emerged from behind Kepler 442c's largest moon. Dragon carriers, living ships that the ancient species had kept hidden for centuries, now revealed themselves as the Alliance's secret weapon. These weren't technological constructions like human vessels. They were actual creatures, space-adapted dragons the size of human battleships whose bodies had been modified over generations to serve as living spacecraft. They carried not weapons, but dragon young who had been trained specifically for space combat. The Harvester fleet faltered as they suddenly found themselves outnumbered by an enemy they had thought extinct, but Marcus wasn't finished with his surprises. "All ships execute Spark's gambit," he ordered. It was the most daring tactic the Alliance had developed, something only possible with the complete trust that existed between human and dragon partners. Every human ship in the fleet shut down their shields simultaneously, leaving themselves completely vulnerable to enemy fire. But in that same instant, every dragon in the fleet channeled their bioelectric fields into a single, massive defensive matrix. The energy barrier that resulted was unlike anything known to galactic science, a living shield that not only absorbed enemy fire, but converted it into power for allied weapons. The Harvesters found themselves shooting at an enemy that grew stronger with each attack. More importantly, they found their own weapons being turned against them as the Dragon Energy Matrix redirected incoming fire back at its source. "Harvester fleet is breaking formation," reported Torres with excitement. "Multiple vessels are attempting to retreat." But Marcus wasn't ready to let them go. The Alliance had suffered too much, lost too many friends, to allow any of the Harvester fleet to escape and report their new capabilities to the greater swarm. Time to show them what friendship really means. Spark's thoughts carried fierce joy. What happened next would be recorded in the military histories of a dozen species. Instead of pursuing the retreating Harvesters with conventional tactics, the human ships and dragons began a maneuver that violated every known principle of space combat. The human vessels deliberately flew into the middle of the Harvester formation, while dragons used their bioelectric fields to temporarily merge their nervous systems with human crews. For a brief, terrifying moment, every human and dragon in the fleet became a single organism with hundreds of bodies and one unified will. The Harvesters found themselves fighting not a fleet, but a single entity that could coordinate perfectly across vast distances. Every human ship moved with dragon grace, while every dragon struck with human precision. The enemy's numerical advantage became meaningless when they were facing an opponent that could think and act as one. The battle ended not with a gradual victory, but with a sudden total collapse of Harvester resistance. Unable to comprehend an enemy that transcended individual consciousness while maintaining individual creativity, the alien fleet simply stopped fighting. Their hive-mind mentality, which had been their greatest strength, became a weakness when faced with an opponent that could achieve perfect coordination without sacrificing independence. In the aftermath, as the Alliance forces secured the surviving Harvester vessels, Marcus felt something unprecedented through his link with Spark. Other dragon packs throughout the galaxy were responding to the battle song they had broadcast, ancient voices that had been silent for centuries now calling out across interstellar space. "Dr. Kim," Marcus called to the xenolinguistics officer who had accompanied the fleet. "Are you getting translations on these new signals?" Dr. Kim looked up from her instruments with tears streaming down her face. "Admiral, it's not just translation anymore. The dragons have been teaching me to hear battle song directly. These are dragon packs from a dozen different systems, all of them reporting that Harvester occupation forces are withdrawing. Word of our victory is spreading faster than light through dragon space." Marcus felt Spark's joy exploding through their mental link, a happiness so pure and complete that it brought tears to his own eyes. The young dragon he had rescued from a pile of rocks had lived to see its entire species freed from 1,000 years of oppression. But more than that, Spark had been the bridge that allowed two completely different forms of intelligence to become something greater than either could achieve alone. The Human-Dragon Alliance wasn't just a military partnership anymore. It was evolution in action, the birth of a new form of consciousness that combined biological intuition with technological precision. "Signal the fleet," Marcus ordered. "We're taking our prisoners home. And then we're going to visit every system where dragons are calling for help. The Age of Harvester expansion is over." As the UES Spark's Fury turned toward home, Marcus stood in the observation lounge watching the dragons who flew alongside the ship. Spark was in the center of the formation, no longer the uncertain youngling who had needed rescue, but a leader whose courage had inspired an entire species to believe in the possibility of freedom. Through their mental link, Marcus felt the dragon's contentment and something more. Gratitude, not just for being saved from under those rocks 2 years ago, but for being given the chance to help save everyone else. "You know," Marcus said aloud, knowing Spark would hear him through their bond, "I used to think I rescued you that day in the canyon." "You did," Spark replied, amusement coloring the thought. "But I rescued you right back. That's what friends do." Looking out at the mixed human-dragon formation flying through the stars, Marcus had to agree. The rescue in the canyon had been mutual, and it had grown into something that changed the galaxy. The Harvesters had been defeated not by superior technology or greater numbers, but by something they couldn't understand or counter: the simple power of two different species choosing to trust each other completely. In the months that followed, the Alliance would grow to include dozens of species that the Harvesters had oppressed for centuries. But at its heart, it would always be the bond between one human who had chosen compassion over caution and one dragon who had learned that strength shared was strength multiplied. The baby dragon Marcus had rescued had indeed won the undying loyalty of its pack. But more than that, it had won something far greater: proof that in a galaxy often dominated by conquest and fear, friendship remained the most powerful force of all. As news of the victory spread throughout human and dragon space, children of both species would grow up hearing the story of Admiral Chen and his dragon partner Spark. They would learn that the greatest adventures began not with grand plans or mighty weapons, but with a simple decision to help someone in need. And they would carry that lesson with them to the stars, ensuring that the alliance born in a rocky canyon on Kepler 442c would endure for generations yet to come. The rescue had become a revolution, and the revolution had become the foundation for a new age of cooperation among the stars. Marcus smiled as he felt Spark's contentment flowing through their permanent bond. Some rescues, he reflected, saved a lot more than just one life. Sometimes they saved entire civilizations and showed the galaxy what was possible when intelligence, courage, and compassion worked together. The Dragon Pack's loyalty had been won, but so had their friendship. And in the end, that friendship had proven stronger than any enemy the galaxy could send against it.